Hello, and thank you for tuning in. My name is Brittany, and I'm the Deputy Director at the Chicago Abortion Fund, and I have had an abortion. We like to open the show up by saying that to help take some of the stigma surrounding abortion away. Just a quick intro about the Chicago Abortion Fund. It was founded in 1985 by women who saw that there was a need for funding for women who were in the second trimester. A lot of the times when women do find out that they are pregnant and they choose to terminate the pregnancy, they're already well into their first trimester, and if you are of low income or no income at all, or certain insurance restrictions, you cannot come up with the money to pay for your procedure in time. You do go over into your second trimester, and that is why the people who started CAF decided to focus their the funding on second trimester abortions, and that was their mission. So as I said, we do provide funding for women who are seeking abortion in their second trimester. There's a leadership group that started within CAF by our executive director, Gaylon Alcaraz, and she started that because she wanted to engage the women that CAF served and who, former grantees, and invite them to the table to have their voices heard and to teach and train them on reproductive justice and just really empower them to be leaders within their communities. So former grantees were called back to the table, and we received a lot of training. I'm sorry, that's where I started. I've been volunteering as a part of the My Voice, My Choice leadership group since late 2007. And so now I'm deputy director, so I'll discuss that later also. But yeah, so the leadership group are just women who receive funding and now are empowered to go out and just educate our communities on what reproductive justice is, and reproductive health and reproductive rights and abortion access, which is, like, a lot of people think that anything, when they hear our name, Chicago Abortion Fund, they tend to think that, that's it and that's all we do. And not to say that that's not important, because that is very important, because women do seek these services and they should have access to it. But we also talk about a lot of other things. We promote we do promote safe sex. We go out in our communities and we pass out condoms, and we distribute a lot of information on birth control, other issues that we face in our communities. So it's not just about abortion, but that is a huge part of what we do. I've mentioned a lot about reproductive justice and what that is and what that means, and RJ is what I'll be referring to for the rest of the night. It was a term that was coined in '94 at a Black Women's Caucus, and it basically merges the concepts of reproductive rights and social justice, hence, reproductive justice. And what the RJ framework does, the RJ framework basically is the right to have children, not to have children, and to parent the children that we already have, and it is in safe and healthy environments, and that is based on the human right to make personal decisions about one's life and the obligation of government and society to ensure that the conditions are suitable for implementing one's decision. And that's important for women, especially women of color, low-income women, marginalized women. Too often our voice is not heard. We're not the ones that are seen in front of our legislators or on the news or anything promoting reproductive health and reproductive rights. And in order for us to see that change, we have to be vocal about that. So that's why the Black Women Caucus, they kind of like merged those two concepts, and that's what they came up with. And why is it, and a lot of people say, why is it necessary to include the RJ framework, especially at the Abortion Fund? And it's a huge part of our mission, because when we provide the funding for women without taking a look at all of the factors that contributed to their decision to terminate a pregnancy, it's like we're putting a Band-Aid over a wound, and that isn't healing it. We're not tackling the real issues. Yes, we're servicing their immediate need, but we also need to look at, like I said, the contributing factors in which a woman would choose to seek abortion. I believe, so we have a caller. Hi, caller, go ahead with your question.
Yes, ma'am. I have a friend, and can you hear me?
I can hear you.
And her daughter is pregnant, and she needs a apartment. She's getting evicted because she's unable to work. And she can't stay with her mother because her mother is a senior.
Mhm.
And I was going to try to help her if I can, and I've been looking into different agencies that they have, and I've been having a hard time trying to find a program that has single parent women, that's looking for housing. And I want to know if you know anyone or can direct me to a program that maybe can help, her.
Okay. If you would like to send us an email, I'm going to show, thank you for your call, first of all. I'm going to show our overhead that has our information on there, and if you send us an email with the information you just provided, we will respond to you with possible resources. If we know of places, we will definitely get back to you. So I'm going to go ahead and show you our overhead. As you can see, it's the Chicago Abortion Fund. Our address is 333 West North Avenue, Suite 267. Chicago, Illinois 60610. Our phone where we can be reached is 312-663-0338. And our website is www.chicagoabortionfund.com. And you can email us with any info at info@chicagoabortionfund.com. So as I was saying before the caller, it's very necessary to tackle the real social issues and social injustices that women do face, women of color, marginalized women, low-income women, that we do face. And we had to incorporate that in our mission, and that is why the leadership group is amazing, because no other funds are doing this work. And to really say that you're going to do reproductive justice work means that you have to look at everything and how all the social injustices intersect. And if we're living in neighborhoods that are like food deserts and they don't have any healthy access, first of all, access to healthy foods or safe clinics and access to birth control, and there aren't any schools or there aren't any institutions that have quality education, there's a problem, and we must consider. We have to think about that when people are often quick to judge without looking at all those factors. They want to always throw some outside judgment in there, like whether it's biblical or church related or whatever. I'm not saying that everyone does that and that's why they're against abortion, but this is what you hear all the time from the anti-choice community. But if you don't look at all these other factors into why she chose abortion, and don't really tackle those issues and try to overturn them, then yeah, you're not really doing RJ work, and you don't really care about that woman or her family or whatever other life decisions she makes. I also wanted to talk about just some things that are going on in the news regarding abortion. I know the last couple of shows we have talked about the abortion bans that have been just popping up everywhere. I think this year and last year we saw a lot of abortion bans, and that just shows you like how it's such a touchy, sensitive, and hot topic, but the anti-choice community is relentless in trying to get this legislation passed that basically denies women their right to access safe abortions. Most recently, there's a Senate bill, Senate Bill 5 down in Texas, that it sought out to prohibit abortion in Texas at 20 weeks, and it also, after 20 weeks, and it also was going to regulate first trimester abortion clinics as ambulatory surgical centers, and it was going to restrict access to medication abortions and the abortion pill. Senator Wendy Davis, she's a Democrat down in Texas, she actually stood up for 11 hours doing a filibuster. And basically, that's when someone has to talk for like a lengthy amount of time opposing something that's going on in the legislature to not have it passed. So she really stood up and spoke for women around the country, because even though it was just in Texas, when things like this pass, it's like this trickle effect, and everyone thinks, okay, now we all can do it. So every state jumps on it, as we've seen in Nebraska and Arizona and North Dakota and Kansas. It's all over. So yeah, she stood up and she was there for 11 hours speaking for women around the country. And after they voted on it, so basically those who weren't opposed and who were actually in favor of it, they had to have their vote done by midnight, and it didn't get clocked until 12:03, which therefore made the ban go away, and the bill is gone. But the governor and the lieutenant governor have already suggested, you know, hey, it was a long fight, but we'll be back. So we don't know how soon they'll be back with that ban, trying to get it passed, but they've already told you they'll be back. And like I said, with the previous and most recent bans, it's not going anywhere anytime soon. So that's definitely worth checking out. You can go to Huffington Post, Google it, and just read up on that, because during that time, you know, she had to talk. 11 hours is a long time to talk. So she had to, like, share stories. And that's what I also wanted to get into tonight, just the power of sharing stories, or as I like to say, sharing our experiences, because it is something that we have lived. It's our experience. It's not a story. If someone else is telling it, then they're sharing your story. But I think that we should all begin to really think about and figuring out how we can share our experiences, because the truth is 1 in 3 women do have abortions. And we're not talking about it because we're shamed by society. We're shamed by a lot of institutions, our communities, sometimes our families, into thinking, you know, we did this horrible thing, and they just don't consider anything that woman was going through at that time. I've often shared my story, even on this show. I've shared it in numerous places, on panels. And before I share it, I want to talk about another incident where I was in front of the camera, and we were recording, and we were talking about abortion access and what abortion means to us. And it took me a while to do my take, because even though I didn't realize it at that time, I was still ashamed. I was still ashamed to say that I had an abortion. Well, not ashamed to say it, but there was still shame behind it, because like I said, I was saying it for a few times before then. But to stand there in front of the camera, and there's no one in there, and it's just me and the camera and maybe the guy who was filming it, I teared up. I got very emotional, and I realized there was a lot of shame behind that, not realizing how powerful I had been those months before when I spoke out about my abortion experiences. But yeah, to really sit with that and grow from that. And then it's like at that one moment, all the stigma and shame was gone from me sharing my story and having that experience. I believe that it is a very powerful tool when we use our voice, especially surrounding something that is so sensitive. But by sharing our stories, other people see that, other women see that, and they know that they are not alone. The media and a lot of anti-choice people try to always make it seem like women are ashamed of their abortions, and I'm not saying that they are not. I know I can only speak for myself, and I've spoken with other women who are not, and I don't regret it. I wasn't ashamed that I did it. I was ashamed to talk about it, because I knew, I knew what what everyone was saying, what the reaction would be. So I just encourage people to share their stories and share that experience, because you're going to possibly encourage another woman to speak up. And I know you heard the saying, a closed mouth doesn't get fed, and it really doesn't, because if you're trying to, especially if you're a pro-choice advocate, it's so necessary to share your experience, because when people see you up there and you're already speaking out about it and in support of it, and then to share your experience, you encourage and uplift and empower another woman to share her story as well. So before I get into my story, I'm going to show our overhead again, because I know I've been talking quite a while. So our website is the Chicago Abortion Fund. Our address is 333 West North Avenue, Suite 267, and that's in Chicago. Our zip code is 60610. You can give us a call at 312-663-0338. And now our website is www.chicagooabortionfund.com. And if you want to send us an email and you have further questions and you don't want to call, you can shoot us an email at info@chicagooabortionfund.com. And I believe we have a question that came in. Why is the fund necessary, and what are some of the financial barriers to women receiving abortion procedures? Okay, so the fund is necessary because, as it relates to me and my experience, I was working part-time at a local grocery chain, and I was only making about $450, $500 a month. This was about 5.5 years ago, so I can't really remember, but I know it wasn't any more than $500. And I was sharing an apartment with someone and their child, and I already had children, and we had to pay rent, of course, and utilities. So I needed the fund because I didn't have the money to access the procedure. I tried to have it in the first trimester, could not come up with the money, could not borrow the money, because everyone that I could ask for money that I knew worked, they were still in a financial bind. So I needed the organization. I really needed them. This is why they exist, to help women like me who go through things the same way that I did. They end up paying about a third of it, and I borrowed the rest, like barely, and just had to like not pay some bills, and that just pushed me further back. But this is why the fund is necessary, because my experience is someone else's. We wouldn't be around for almost 30 years if these weren't shared experiences with women throughout the nation. And just like I said, some of the financial barriers, like if you choose to do it in your first trimester and then you don't have the money, you don't work, or you're underemployed, how are you going to come up with the money? Second trimester procedures are anywhere from I think they're like around $750 average. Some can go up to more than that. I've seen some at like $1950. So and the further along you are, or you're forced to wait. I hate when people say, well, why did you wait so long? Women are forced to wait. Now, these aren't going to be the circumstances for everyone, and I'm not saying that by any means, but this is a reality. Like, when some women are forced to wait. If they have to wait and save up from 2 paychecks, that is about 4.5 weeks right there. Then if you've just found out and you're already maybe like 11 weeks, I mean, there you are, you're already at about 15. So just being underemployed or unemployed, don't have access, and a lot of the times women are coming out of state to go to other states or different cities, so you have to think about transportation and child care, missing days from work if you are employed, just to get to this whole other state or this whole other city or town to have your procedure done. Then you have to cover all those other expenses. So it's not just the expense of your procedure. And like in Mississippi, there's like 1 abortion clinic that they're fighting to keep open, because it's like every year they push some ban that kind of restricts what they have going on there. So just imagine if you're in Mississippi and you can imagine that if it's just that 1 abortion clinic, that they have to be backed up. Like, the need is there, but they don't have the resources. So even though they do have the clinic, and a lot of people say that, well, at least they have one open. No, because then the women who are steady calling in and need to make appointments, who have made that decision to have an abortion, they still are probably forced to go somewhere else. So there are a lot of financial barriers and just barriers, period, whether from the state or Medicaid not covering it, if that's your insurance, and that's the Hyde Amendment. We've talked about the Hyde Amendment many times on the show, and basically that denies federal funding from paying for abortion. So if you are a federal employee in the military, or you receive Medicaid as your only source of insurance, you can't pay for your procedure. Well, the state and the government won't pay for it thanks to the Hyde Amendment. So there are a lot of financial barriers, and I appreciate that question. We often get another question that talks about like the leadership group, and like, why is it important to engage the community, and why not just wait for outsiders to do the work? I'm reading this book about a very prominent black leader from the 60s, and he was saying how he learned as a child that if you don't rant and rave and demand and make noise for what you want, you're not going to get it. So it's often just white women or white people or politicians or someone other than the marginalized women who are speaking about abortion access and often now reproductive rights and reproductive health, and it doesn't sometimes always directly affect them. This is in no way taken away from the amazing work that they do, but the reality is that a lot of the times we're not represented. Marginalized, low-income, women of color, marginalized people, period, and people of color, period. A lot of the times we are just not at the plate, and some of that is because we don't know how, because I didn't know how to successfully lobby or do in-district visits with our aldermen or our elected officials. I didn't know how to do any of that, so I can attest to that. So yeah, we're not being heard. We're being silenced purposely. So we engage our community to give them this information, and also, you know, encourage them to find out this information through other resources. Like, don't just take our word for it. Like, when we go out and we do our community outreach, we do have statistics that are like from the CDC or other like accredited organizations and institutions, but we also encourage you to do the research for yourself, and more than anything, we just want to empower and encourage people to come out and be their own advocates, because you have to be seen and you have to be heard. Your voice matters. What you think matters. What your experiences matter. So it's very important to engage the community, because if we want to see the change, we also have to create it. So I can speak for my community and people of color, marginalized people, like all day long, because I love to do it and I have a passion for it. But at the end of the day, I have to get out and encourage people to also speak up for themselves, and that's within any situation, any setting, besides RJ work or abortion access. Like anything in your life, you have to be an advocate for yourself, and that really. And when you show up to things or you call your elected officials, like, it really makes a difference. I remember we were encouraging people to call their senator, Senator Collins, to vote yes on the House bill that was promoting comprehensive sex ed for grades 6 through 12. And you know, before we did our community outreach, she was a no. And after we went out there and we passed out about 1,000 informational packets, and along with our condoms and our postcards and everything else that we always go out and pass out, that same week we found out that she was leaning yes. So, you know, people were calling her and encouraging her, you know, hey, we need this, we support this, we're your constituents, you know, you work for us. And I just didn't want to single her out, because, you know, you need to always, you know, like, stalk down your elected officials, because they do work for you. So if you want to see some change, or you're not happy about what's going on in your community, what's going on in your life, and they're supposed to be the change agents, you need to speak up and be vocal about that. And not just wait for people to do it from the outside. Because like I said, it's so important for them to see us. I can only speak for people for so long. Like, you have to get out and just really use your voice, because the voice is very powerful. I do what I do today because I've seen other women of color and other marginalized people get out and really just advocate on behalf of what they believe. And that was empowering and inspiring for me, because I wasn't used to seeing that. So I definitely want to just encourage you to always think of ways where you can be an advocate for yourself. And just want to leave you tonight with a couple of things that I feel like you should, like, take the time to research and look up. There's been some Supreme Court decisions all yesterday and this week. One regarding affirmative action. Also I did affirmative action. Also, there's one with the Voters' Rights Act. And there was also a victory for gay marriage, and that is great and that is awesome. But I also feel like we should also look up the things that are going on with affirmative action and the Voting Rights Act, because, yeah, when it's time for some elections, there's going to be some things going on there. So I encourage you to take the time to look that up, and also just check us out. I've given you our information. Yeah, I'll give you our overhead one more time, and thanks for tuning in.